I contributed $10,000 to my brother's wedding, then got a snarky DM, "Don't wear anything attention-grabbing." I agreed. I wore my late father's watch instead and exposed a secret that left the room frozen. My brother Jared is getting married to Carly, and honestly, I wasn't super thrilled about it, but I've been trying to play nice because, well, he's my brother. A little backstory: we've never been close, and it's been even more awkward since I became a widow 2 years ago. But when Jared asked for financial help for his wedding, I ended up contributing $10,000. I didn't really want to, but I didn't want to cause drama either. Then came the message from Carly a day before the wedding: "Don't wear anything attention-grabbing." I agreed, but I decided to wear my late father's watch to the wedding. I didn't expect it to unravel everything. At least, not like this. I've always lived in Portland, Oregon, grew up here, built my life here. There are days when I'm happy with where I am, and days when I feel like a ghost in my own city, just moving through the motions. But family has always been one of those things I tried to hold on to. Even after David, my husband, passed away, I kept trying to make everything seem normal for my 2 kids, Emma and Owen. They were 6 and 9 when it happened, so I was still in the thick of parenting and grieving. My parents had been incredibly supportive, but I couldn't help feeling like they didn't really understand the weight of it all. That's where Jared comes in. He's always been the golden child in the family. At least, that's how I saw it. He's got a great job, a beautiful fiancé, and a life that seemed picture-perfect. He called me a few months ago, all excited, asking if I'd be willing to help with wedding costs. It wasn't the first time he'd asked for something, but I agreed anyway. I didn't have the best relationship with Carly, his fiancée, but I wanted to be supportive. That's when I made the transfer. $10,000. The next day, I get a message on Instagram from Carly. She's polite, but there's a sharpness in her words that immediately raises my guard. She thanks me for my donation, generous, sure, but then it follows with, "Please don't wear anything attention-grabbing tomorrow. We want all eyes on Jared. Thanks for understanding." Now, this wasn't the first time I'd felt something weird from Carly. Ever since Jared and Carly got together, I felt like she was trying to push me out. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just my grief talking, but the tone of that message rubbed me the wrong way. Who says something like that to someone who just helped them out? I didn't respond right away. I thought about it for a while, trying to figure out what my best move was. Part of me wanted to fire back, but I also didn't want to start drama. Not at Jared's wedding, of all places. Eventually, I replied, "Okay, no problem. I'll keep it low-key." But honestly, that was just what I told her. In my head, I was already planning something else. I wasn't going to let anyone tell me how to dress, especially not after I'd been so generous. And this was no ordinary piece of jewelry I was wearing. It was my father's watch, something he had left behind when he passed. It was one of the only things of his I still had, and I hadn't worn it in a while. I wasn't sure what kind of statement I was hoping to make, but something inside me told me to wear it. It was mine to wear, and it was a part of my father's legacy. So, I went ahead and slipped it on the morning of Jared's wedding. The wedding was at this beautiful vineyard about an hour outside of Portland, and as soon as I arrived, I could see that they spared no expense. It was all exactly what I expected from Jared, over the top, beautiful, and meticulously planned. Guests were already mingling, sipping champagne, and fawning over how great everything looked. Carly's side of the family was mostly composed of high society types, wearing designer clothes and greeting each other with air kisses. I felt out of place almost immediately. Sure, I'd dressed in a simple black dress, modest but elegant, but the watch on my wrist was the only part of me that didn't fit the mold. It was large, a bit older, and it had a certain weight to it, literally and figuratively. It didn't scream attention-grabbing, but it was something that felt important to me. It felt like a piece of my father had been brought back into the world. But as soon as I stepped into the venue, I could feel the coldness. Carly greeted me with a polite smile, but her eyes briefly darted to my wrist before she moved on to the next guest. I couldn't help but notice. A few minutes later, she came over to talk to me. "Hey Nora, you made it," she said, her voice overly chipper. "You look nice." "Thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. There was a tightness in her tone. I could see her eyeing my wrist again, clearly uncomfortable with the watch. But, as usual, she said nothing directly. Instead, she continued with the pleasantries and moved on to someone else. I didn't think much of it at the time. But the more I watched her interact with everyone, the more I got this gut feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't just the watch, though I was sure it had bothered her, it was everything about her demeanor. She was too perfect, too polished. I could feel how she was trying to fit everything into a neat little box, a box that clearly didn't have space for someone like me. I mean, I wasn't trying to be a distraction, but I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't wanted there. The ceremony was beautiful, but it was hard for me to focus on it. I could see Jared up there with Carly, his face glowing with happiness, but it felt like the whole thing was staged. There was no warmth between them. No spark. The vows were perfect, but they lacked a certain depth. Afterward, at the reception, everything felt a little more strained. I could see Carly working the room, greeting guests, making sure everyone was happy. I didn't mind the quiet, but the tension was palpable. And then, when it came time for the speeches, things took a turn I wasn't expecting. Jared stood up first, of course. He was charming, thanking everyone for coming, acknowledging the hard work Carly had put into the wedding. Everyone clapped, and then Carly got up to give her speech. I didn't expect what came next. "Before I begin," she said, her voice loud enough for the room to hear, "I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our special day. I also want to thank my wonderful new husband." She paused, a flicker of something crossing her face as she scanned the room. Her eyes settled on me, and I swear I saw something shift in her gaze, something cold, something sharp. "I especially want to thank Nora for her extremely generous contribution to our wedding." A few awkward claps rang out, and then she continued, her tone sweet but with a hint of something cutting, "But just a reminder to everyone, please, respect the bride on her special day. It's important that we all focus on the happy couple. No one needs to make a scene with, flashy accessories." I felt my stomach drop. The room went quiet. People shifted uncomfortably. All eyes were on me, and I suddenly realized what she was referring to, my father's watch. I stood up, my voice steady but loud enough for the room to hear. "If you're talking about my father's watch, Carly, then yes, I'm wearing it," I said, every word sharp and deliberate. "It's the only thing I have left of him, and if that's an issue, then we can talk about it later." The air in the room froze. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Carly's face turned a pale shade of white, and Jared, who had been standing beside her, looked like he had just seen a ghost. I could feel the eyes of every guest on me, but I wasn't backing down. Carly turned her back on me without saying another word, and the room buzzed with whispers. It wasn't just about the watch. It was about something else. The whole evening had shifted. The secret that everyone had been gossiping about for months, Carly's affair, was now painfully obvious to everyone in the room. The tension, the coldness, the way she had just tried to subtly humiliate me, it all made sense now. But I wasn't about to let that slide. I wasn't going to let her turn the tables on me. Jared hadn't been aware of everything. Not until that moment. I could see it in his eyes, the shock, the realization. The secret had been exposed, and it had nothing to do with a watch. The room remained frozen in place for what felt like an eternity. It was as if time itself had come to a halt. The clinking of glasses, the soft hum of background music, everything faded into a muffled blur. I could hear the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of every single gaze in the room. Carly hadn't even turned around. She just stood there, her back to me, staring down at her glass of champagne, fingers trembling slightly. The silence was deafening. Jared, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked from Carly to me and back again, like a man torn between two worlds. It was clear that the full extent of what I had said, and the implications of it, were just starting to sink in. He didn't know what to do. I didn't, Jared began, but his voice cracked, and he paused, collecting himself. I didn't know you felt that way, Nora. I stared at him, holding my ground. It's not about how I feel, Jared. It's about what's real. What's been going on? I'm not the one hiding things here. His face turned a shade paler as I spoke, and he shifted uncomfortably. His hands fidgeted at his sides. I could see the tension in his posture, the way his body physically recoiled from the truth. I couldn't blame him for not wanting to hear it. No one ever wants to hear that kind of betrayal. But I wasn't going to apologize. I couldn't. Carly turned around then, her face as white as a sheet. For a moment, she just stood there, her mouth slightly agape, eyes wide. She was speechless. The expression on her face shifted between anger, disbelief, and something else, something more painful, though I couldn't quite place it. I couldn't tell if she was angry because I had just exposed her, or because she was caught off guard by the public nature of it all. Either way, she wasn't going to recover from this easily. You have no right to say that here, she finally said, her voice tight, trying to mask the tremor. This is our day, Nora. You're ruining everything. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. If anything, they only reinforced what I already knew. She had been hiding something far darker than I had initially realized. And I had been the one to reveal it. I wasn't doing this for revenge. Not really. But it felt like justice. The guests were still murmuring among themselves now, whispers snaking through the air like thick smoke. Some were looking at Carly, some at me, and others at Jared. The tension was so thick you could feel it in your chest. I knew the questions were already swirling in their minds. What had happened? What had I uncovered? Jared was still standing there, motionless. He finally blinked a few times, his hands running through his hair, his face a mix of confusion and anger. Why did you keep this from me? He asked, his voice raw, looking directly at Carly. His eyes were pleading, desperate for an answer. Carly, for a split second, seemed like she was about to break. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She closed it, then opened it again, but still nothing. The look in her eyes was that of a woman caught, a woman whose carefully crafted illusion was crumbling to pieces. I had exposed the cracks in her perfect facade, and she didn't know how to glue them back together. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, Carly turned her head, avoiding eye contact. You don't understand, Jared, she whispered. It's not what you think. Jared's face twisted with disbelief. It's not what I think. So, you weren't sleeping with someone else behind my back? He snapped. His voice was sharp, edged with anger. I could feel the heat coming off of him from where I stood. How long has this been going on, Carly? Carly didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at the floor, clearly struggling to find the words. I could almost feel her scrambling, trying to come up with an excuse, trying to convince herself that she hadn't done anything wrong. But it was too late. The truth had already spilled out, and there was no taking it back. She began, then faltered, clearly unable to complete her sentence. Her breath was shallow, and her chest rose and fell rapidly, like she was on the verge of breaking down. She shook her head in frustration, as if she couldn't even comprehend the situation she was in. I didn't want you to find out like this, she muttered, almost to herself. Jared's jaw clenched, and his fists tightened. Then why didn't you just tell me the truth? Why did you lie to me? He shouted, his voice thick with frustration and betrayal. He was no longer trying to maintain any composure. All the polite pleasantries and well-constructed walls of their relationship had shattered in one moment, and now, raw emotion was leaking through. I felt the anger bubbling up in me as well, but I didn't let it show. This was his fight now, not mine. I had done what I came to do. Jared needed to see it for himself. I didn't think you'd ever find out, Carly said quietly, almost as if she were speaking to herself, the words slipping out without any thought. I thought I could keep it hidden. I was scared, okay? I didn't want to lose you. But the damage was already done. Her confession hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jared stood there, his eyes wide, processing her words as they settled in. His face twisted, a mix of pain and disbelief playing across his features. I had never seen him look so broken. The room was still, the conversation between them too intense for anyone to speak over. But all around us, I could feel the presence of the other guests. The tension was palpable, and though they didn't want to intrude on this intimate moment, it was impossible for them not to overhear. Every word Carly spoke seemed to echo louder in the room, every admission dragging the whole event further into chaos. I stood there, silently observing the destruction unfolding before me. I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I wore my father's watch, maybe some cathartic release, maybe some small revenge. But I hadn't expected it to bring everything to the surface so violently. What had started as a simple gesture had turned into an unraveling of a whole life. Jared's world, his carefully constructed reality, was crumbling right in front of him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I wasn't proud of the way things had gone down, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and watch Carly continue to manipulate everyone around her. Jared deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. I only hoped that, in the long run, he'd see that I had done this out of love for him, not spite. As the evening continued, the mood shifted dramatically. The guests, who had once been lively and excited, now stood in clusters, whispering among themselves. The air was thick with the weight of the secrets that had been exposed. I could hear snatches of conversation as people speculated, judging Carly, wondering if they had seen the signs all along. Jared remained distant, his eyes glazed over as he processed everything. He barely spoke to anyone for the rest of the night, retreating into himself, away from the wedding he had so eagerly awaited. Carly, on the other hand, kept a distance from everyone. She was trying to hold herself together, but I could see her shaking as she stood off by the edge of the reception hall, her face pale, her eyes darting around nervously. She didn't have the same confidence now. The truth had stolen that from her. By the time the night was winding down, I could feel the emotional exhaustion weighing heavily on me. I gathered my children and told them it was time to go. Emma and Owen had enjoyed the cake and the music, but they could sense the change in the atmosphere too. The smiles had faded, and the excitement had vanished. As we left the vineyard, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of finality. Things were never going to be the same. The truth had shattered the illusion that Jared had built, and there was no going back. What would happen next? Would Jared confront Carly? Would he still marry her after everything that had come to light? I didn't know. But as we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wedding, the one I had spent so much time, money, and emotional energy supporting, was a turning point in all our lives. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days after the wedding were a blur, and the weight of what had happened at the vineyard settled heavily on my chest. I kept replaying that moment in my mind, the way Carly's face had paled when I stood up, the stunned silence that followed, and Jared's expression as the truth unraveled in front of him. I had done the right thing, hadn't I? But the nagging doubt lingered. I tried to keep my focus on my kids, Emma and Owen, as much as possible. They were still adjusting to life without their father, and I had to keep up the appearance of stability for them. But it was hard not to think about the wreckage left behind at the vineyard. I knew things wouldn't be the same with Jared, even if he eventually forgave me for what I had done. The question wasn't whether we could patch things up, it was whether the damage was too great to fix. I had always been there for Jared, in my own way. We were never the closest siblings, but there was always a bond. Growing up, I was the one who looked out for him when things got tough, even though he never seemed to need me. And now, here I was, watching him face his biggest heartbreak. I didn't know what to do next. It wasn't long before the phone calls started. The first was from Jared. His voice on the other end was strained, shaky. "Nora," he said, barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's real anymore. The weight of his words settled deep in my stomach. He wasn't asking for advice. He wasn't even sure what he needed. All he had was the raw pain of realizing he had been living a lie. I know, I said quietly. I know, Jared. This is all a lot to take in. But you need to think about what you want, not what Carly wants. Carly, he scoffed, the bitterness in his voice sharp. She's been lying to me for months. I don't even know who she is anymore. I don't know who I am without her, Nora. I thought she was the one. I thought we had something real. His voice cracked, and I could hear the pain behind it. It broke my heart. I wanted to reach through the phone and pull him out of that despair. But the truth was, I couldn't. I couldn't fix this for him. He had to do it himself. You'll figure it out, Jared, I said, my voice softer. You've got more strength than you realize. And you deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not someone who's hiding things from you. I thought I had that, he whispered, almost to himself. I thought I was enough for her. You are, I said firmly. But she wasn't enough for you. You deserve more than that. There was a long pause, and I could hear Jared breathing, the weight of everything pressing on him. I waited, letting him gather his thoughts. I don't know what to do about the wedding, he said finally, the words heavy. I feel like I've wasted all this time. All that money. Everything. I don't even know if I can look at her the same way again. Don't worry about the wedding right now, I told him. You need time. Take it. Think about what you want. You don't owe anyone an explanation until you're ready to give it. He sighed deeply. I'm scared, Nora. I'm scared of losing everything. I know you are, I said, my voice steady. But you have to lose what's wrong before you can find what's right. The conversation ended with a few more words of reassurance, but it didn't feel like enough. I knew Jared needed more than just a conversation. He needed time, space, and the clarity to see beyond the mess Carly had made of his life. The next few days were a blur of emotions. Jared didn't reach out again for a while, and I found myself wondering if I had made a mistake by exposing the truth so publicly. Maybe I should have given him more time to process things on his own. But every time I second-guessed myself, I remembered that he was the one who needed to hear the truth. It wasn't fair to let him live in a lie just because it was easier. Then, a few days later, Carly called me. I had known this was coming. She wasn't going to let the situation slide without trying to regain some control. I had expected the anger, the blame, and the accusations, but what I didn't expect was the fear in her voice. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice shaky, almost pleading. I didn't answer right away. What's this about, Carly? I'm sorry, okay, she said quickly, as if it were spilling out before she could stop herself. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I don't know what happened. I'm scared, Nora. I don't want to lose Jared. I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of her words pressing on me. I didn't want to be the one to be her sounding board. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that she was struggling with the consequences of her own actions. You should have thought about that before, Carly, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This isn't about what you want anymore. It's about what Jared needs. I need him, she almost shouted, her voice desperate. You don't understand. I love him. I've always loved him. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. And now I don't know how to fix it. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I almost felt bad for her. But I quickly pushed that feeling away. She wasn't the one who had been blindsided. She wasn't the one whose world had been shattered. You can't fix it by making excuses, I said, my voice firm. Jared deserves someone who doesn't have to hide things. He deserves someone who will be honest with him from the start. You can't just take all of this back. I never wanted to hurt him, she said quietly, and I could hear the tears in her voice. But now I've lost him. I've ruined everything. You did that to yourself, Carly, I replied, though it felt like my heart was splitting in two. Jared's going through his own process right now. He has to figure out what's best for him. Don't expect him to just forgive you because you're sorry. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faintest sobs before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I just want to fix this, Nora, she said. I'll do anything to make it right. You can't fix it, Carly, I said softly. It's too late for that. Jared has to decide what's best for him, and right now, he needs space. She didn't respond for a while, and when she finally spoke again, it was a soft, defeated whisper. I just hope he'll find it. I hope he can forgive me someday. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know if Jared could forgive her. Could any of us? The wound she had caused was deep, and though time might heal it, the scar would always remain. The conversation ended with her promising to give Jared the space he needed, and I could only hope that she would stick to her word. But I knew that Carly wasn't going to give up without a fight. That much was clear. As the days went on, I watched from a distance as Jared retreated further into himself. He didn't want to talk about the wedding or Carly anymore. Whenever we spoke, it was about the kids, about life, about anything but the relationship that had just shattered before his eyes. I couldn't blame him. I didn't want to push him. But I knew that eventually, he would have to make a decision. A decision that would shape the rest of his life. And all I could do was wait, hoping that somehow, he would find his way through the pain. That he would come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and maybe, just maybe, able to forgive me for exposing the truth. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But sometimes, the hardest things in life were the ones that needed to be done the most. Days turned into weeks after that phone call with Carly. Jared seemed to go deeper into himself, almost like he was trapped in a fog of confusion and hurt. The phone calls between us had become fewer, and when we did talk, it was never about the wedding, never about Carly. It was as if he was trying to avoid acknowledging the wreckage that had once been his life. I watched from a distance, knowing that he needed space but also feeling an overwhelming sense of urgency. He was my brother. I had done what I had to do at the wedding, exposed the truth because I knew he deserved better. But I still couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at me. Had I pushed him too far? Had I ruined everything by pulling the rug out from under him? I didn't know the answer. But I did know that he was still trying to keep the pieces of his life together. Slowly, but surely, I could see the cracks starting to heal. He wasn't the same. He didn't have the same smile. But he wasn't as lost as he had been in the days right after the wedding. Then came the call that would change everything. It was from Jared, and this time, his voice sounded different, stronger, firmer, even a little lighter. Nora, he said, and I could hear a slight tremor in his voice, but it wasn't the one I had become familiar with over the past few weeks. This was the voice of someone who had made a decision. I think I've finally figured it out. I've made my choice. I held my breath. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation, but I had to know. I needed to know that Jared was going to be okay. I'm listening, I said carefully. I'm done with Carly, he said, each word heavy with finality. I've spent all this time trying to justify everything, trying to convince myself it was just a mistake. But the truth is, Nora, she lied to me. She didn't just cheat on me, she didn't just betray me. She disrespected me. And I've let her. I let her convince me I was the problem. But I'm not the problem. My heart skipped a beat. I could feel the weight of the decision in his words. He was done. I never wanted to admit it, he continued. But you were right. You were right to tell me the truth. It hurt, but it was what I needed to hear. I've spent too much of my life trying to make other people happy. I haven't put myself first in years. And now, I am. I couldn't speak at first. The emotion in his voice was palpable, and I could feel the relief that was starting to seep through him. It was a slow release of everything he'd been holding in. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hope for him again. I'm proud of you, Jared, I said softly. This is your life. You have to live it for you, not for anyone else. He was quiet for a moment, then let out a shaky breath. I'm taking some time off work. I've got a few things to sort out, but I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm going to get away. Find some peace. I need to learn how to be alone again, how to be me again. It was the beginning of something new for him. I could feel it. The old Jared, the one who had been so wrapped up in what others thought, in playing the part of the perfect son, the perfect fiancé, was starting to fade. He was carving out a space for himself. I didn't hear much from him for the next few weeks. But then, one afternoon, I got a message from Jared. It was brief, but the satisfaction in his words was unmistakable. I'm officially done with Carly. She's tried to get me back, begged me to reconsider, but I told her I couldn't. I won't. She doesn't get to tear me apart again. I've learned my lesson. A wave of relief washed over me. I knew Carly would try. She would try anything to worm her way back into his life, but Jared had found the strength to stand firm. And more importantly, he had found the strength to look after himself. A week later, I saw the post. It was on Jared's Facebook page, public, for everyone to see. He'd posted a picture of himself, standing in front of a small cottage by a lake. There was a big smile on his face, one that was real, one that reached his eyes. Starting over, the caption read, "Here's to new beginnings." I couldn't help but smile. My brother was finding himself again, in a way that I didn't think he could. He wasn't just escaping. He was embracing what came next. It was everything I had hoped for him. Then came the day when Carly tried to reach out again. It wasn't a surprise. I had been waiting for it. She called me, sounding frantic, as if she were on the verge of losing everything. "Nora," she said quickly, her voice desperate. "I need you to tell Jared I'm sorry. I need you to tell him that I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. He's my everything. I can't lose him." I paused, considering for a moment how I should respond. Part of me wanted to be cruel, to tell her that it was too late, that Jared had moved on and would never look back. But I also knew that I had to be honest, as hard as it was. "You had your chance, Carly," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You had all the chances in the world to be honest with him. To be the person he deserved. But you lied, and you hurt him in ways that can't be undone. Jared's done." There was a long silence on the other end. Then she let out a sharp breath, almost like she was trying to hold back tears. "You're right," she whispered. "I messed up. I messed up so badly. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could fix us." "You can't fix what you broke, Carly," I said. "And I think you need to realize that." Another silence stretched between us. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know, Carly," I said honestly. "But you need to stop trying to drag him back into something that isn't good for either of you. He's moving on. And you need to as well." The call ended shortly after that, and I could only hope that Carly would finally face the consequences of her actions. I wasn't interested in watching her crumble, but I couldn't pretend that I didn't feel a sense of vindication. The truth had come out. The lie had been exposed. And Jared, my brother, was free. A month later, Jared came back to town. He hadn't told anyone except me, but I knew he was coming back with a new purpose. He reached out, asking if we could meet. When I saw him, I barely recognized the man standing in front of me. He looked more confident, more at ease, like he had shaken off years of guilt and expectation. He was smiling, and it wasn't the forced smile of someone trying to please others. It was real. "You were right, Nora," he said, taking a deep breath. "I don't know how I got so lost. But I think I'm finally finding my way back. I don't need her. I never needed her." And in that moment, I knew everything had come full circle. He was going to be okay. He had learned from his mistakes, and he had grown stronger in the process. As for Carly, I never heard from her again after that call. I didn't need to. Jared had done what was necessary, and his life was finally his again. He was no longer bound by the lies, the deception, and the weight of the past. And in the end, that was the best kind of revenge, the kind that comes when you finally take control of your own life, when you let go of the past and move forward. Jared had won. And I had helped him get there.